Hey, we're the Color Guys. I'm David.
And I'm George.
And today we have a really exciting local Columbia guest with us, Emile DeFelice. Emile is the man behind Soda City Saturday morning's main event in downtown Columbia. Welcome, Emile.
Thank you for having me, David and George. I appreciate it.
This episode is brought to you by Dick Dyer Mercedes-Benz, the first Mercedes-Benz in South Carolina.
No worries. We are super excited to have you with us. We really want to spend this show, kind of getting to know you so that the Columbia community can really know more about you. So why don't you start off a little bit about telling us, your background here in Columbia?
Well, I arrived in Columbia with a suitcase in a box and no plan in 1990, I think. And I got a job at what was the first and only cafe at the time. It's called Adriana's, which is where Drip is now.
Yeah.
Then that was in the morning. Then I worked in the lunch for a gourmet shop. And then I went over to Garibaldi's to work the dinner shift. And I swear there's still people in this town that I met during those days. It's just amazing. There's a 80-plus-year-old guy at my gym, and he walked in the other day. I said, "Oh, Professor, I haven't seen you. I'm Emil from Adriana's." And he goes, "Oh, no." He goes, "Emil was a young guy."
I know at one point.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got a job, all those jobs, and I started going to grad school, and I studied Haitian agriculture as a part of a political kind of lens. And I started gardening at that time, just like my dad. So I just put up the same old garden that he used to do. And and this is actually pertinent to y'all's field, but my neighbor at the time had just developed a new restaurant called Pasta Fresca, and his name is Tony Hanna, and he is a local real estate broker now. And he walked out of the house one day and said, "Can I buy some of that basil?" And honestly, that's all I had planted, and a bunch of plants. And then I said, "Well, you can just have it." "No, I want to do it all the time." I was like, "Okay, sure, buy it." And so he kept buying it and buying it and buying it. And then I started not liking school so much. Although I did get the master's, I thought, well, I'm just going to go out, try this for real. So I bought 2.25 acres out in Lexington off of Platte Springs Road, and started growing literally tens of thousands of pounds of basil, and then went on to other stuff like other herbs and vegetables and flowers. And I did that for 10 years. And then I started farming livestock, and I converted the entire thing into a livestock operation in St. Matthews on a couple hundred acres and so forth. And when I started that, it was in 2003. So I farmed produce from 93 to 2003, and then I started livestock in 2003, and I went to 2013. Well, about first or second year with the livestock thing, I was producing hogs and pork, and I needed a place to sell this stuff. And so I called my buddy Christian, who's been on your show, and he had Jerry and Vine at the time. And there was a couple of other, there's a few other people who I put together. One was a flour farmer, one was a baker. Can't remember who all they were anymore, but anyway, it's just 6 of us. And so we had our first market in November of 2005. And it was called the All Local Farmers Market. And so that's how this whole Soda City market started, was just out of necessity, because I needed somewhere to sell the pork, and I had a few friends who grew other things and they needed to sell their stuff. And we had 220 something customers that first day in November 2005. And, so we kept trucking along, and, we got too big for that spot. And eventually we landed over at 711 Whaley Street next to 701 Whaley.
Yeah.
And we maxed out there at like 30 vendors or something. And so the former mayor Benjamin, used to come down all the time, and other, other notable people that I admired for one reason or another, and who helped me, like the late Joe Taylor, who's a great friend. But anyway, we ended up there. We were there for 3.5 years, but Mayor Benjamin was always talking about moving down to Main Street. Well, it never made sense to me at all. Nobody's down on Main Street. That's a crazy idea. And so one day, the lease was up, and they wanted to double the rent. And I was like, well, I can't. If I could get 60 vendors in here, that would make sense. But I can't. I can just get 30. So I don't. Whatever. Yeah. Can't pay all that. So anyway, then I said, okay, Mayor Benjamin, let's go down to Main Street. So off we went to Main Street with about 20, maybe 22 or 3 vendors. The first few markets on Main Street. So we rebranded from the All Local Farmers Market to Soda City for a number of different reasons, which you can ask about if you want to later. And so we started there with, a couple of dozen vendors, and which is honestly, it's not even enough to fill up a half a block of what we do now.
Yeah.
And it just took off from there. 2013 sort of killed my pork business because of ethanol. There's a big push for ethanol nationwide, and all of a sudden feed cost 4 times what it cost, the week before. So I went from paying like $2,500 a week to $10,000 in cash a week for feed. Wow. You can only hang out in that rarefied air for a minute, and then, okay, I'm out of the pork business apparently. So I had 2 10-year stints as a farmer back to back. I thought the second one was sort of miraculous that I came back like that. But this time I didn't see another option. And so the only option was to take this market and make it something bigger and have yet another career, And so lest anyone thinks these were acts of foresight or genius or anything else, they were not.
Yeah.
They were simply acts of survival, not desperation, but, survival. I got to do something. And at that point, it never worked for anybody. I still haven't ever worked for anybody. So if you spend 20 years as a farmer, what am I going to, who's going to hire me to do what exactly? Nobody. So I knew that the sideshow had to become the main show. And that's how we are, got where we are today, where, we field almost 200 vendors a week over 4 or 5 blocks. This weekend, we must have had 15,000 visitors, guests.
It was packed. We were both down there, and it was to the point where I was like, I can't even move forward. There's so many people.
Yeah.
But it was such a cool experience though, because you have the vendors, but there's also the aspect of like, it's become an event. Like, it's not just you think, okay, Soda City's going on. You think this is a full blown event where I know it was Parents Weekend for USC. And so all of those parents, they had been to Soda City before, and it's just what they do during that weekend now. And,
yes, it sure is.
But could you tell us a little bit about, like, I know you had started with like a dozen, and then the amount started to multiply. Was there a point where it just clicked and vendors joined like you wouldn't believe, or was it a slow process to get to where you're at now?
There was one point before we got to Main Street that it started to pick up speed and allowed us to get into the 701 building. And that was the 2007-8 financial crisis, which had the effect of making people dig deep. Mm-hmm. So if they were having, issues with their employment or paying their mortgage or whatever it is, they thought, oh yeah, I can make cutting boards, or I can sew whatever, pottery, just whatever it was. So that was the first time I thought, oh wow, a downturn in the overall economy doesn't necessarily spell something negative for this business. The same thing can be said for the rise of online shopping. As that became more, common, and it proliferated, all segments of purchasing. The one place where online shopping cannot compete with a market like this is the human experience. Yeah. So when you go down to the market and you see all the dogs and the kids busking, playing their guitars and violins, and you've run into old friends and you smell smells and all these things you cannot do online. And so, there was another little financial, thing that was happening that one might have thought, oh, no, you guys you can't compete on price. No, but we can compete on the experience. And it just all the vendors didn't follow us down to Main Street. 10 or 12 remained at the other place, and they tried that for a year and nobody came around, because there is an art and a skill to all this stuff. It's not just plopping people down in a park and a bunch of tents or something. It doesn't work that way at all. It's very complicated dealing with everyone we have to deal with. We deal with maybe 7 or 8 or 9 different city departments. We deal with building owners, business owners, 2 different groups, residents, which are increasing by the 1,000 in the business district downtown, and of course vendors who are sort of by definition not normal people, because if they're normal, they'd be working at 9 to 5 somewhere, and they're doing this kind of stuff. So it's quite complicated, and to get everything moving in the right direction, to get the governmental authorities to get on your side and make things work instead of not, and to get the businesses and you're closing down a street. So the initial things, we can't lose our parking. Well, if we put 5,000 people on your block, you might forget about the parking, because who cares?
Yeah.
So it did build slowly. At some point, we did sort of have to stand back and say, what is it we do? What's this company again? Because in the meantime, we founded Mardi Gras, which is held in the Rosewood community, the Gervais Street Bridge Dinner, and other cool events around town. But like many small businesses, you go and you go and you go, and the time you take to look in the rearview mirror and see what happened and what you should go back and adjust and fix to keep going forward. We were lucky enough to have some moments of clarity, and like, wait a second, we got to organize this business. It's got to be on paper, public facing documents. There's this and there's that. We have to think about our strategy and define our company and have a mission statement and all that kind of stuff. And write proper job offers, we offer someone a job. Like, none of this stuff I knew about, because I've never been employed. So I don't know anything about anything, right? I had to learn everything on the fly. So at some point it just became this juggernaut of, wow, okay, the business is apparently going to keep going. And here we are today,
So because you depend so much on the city of Columbia to let you facilitate what you do every Saturday morning, talk about that experience, because you mentioned that Mayor Benjamin was wanting you to come downtown, and I guess it's one thing when a mayor or the top person in the city government sitting there going, hey, come do this. But those people come and go, and you have you've built a business now that has to sustain itself through multiple governmental shifts in personnel and personalities. How has that experience been for you?
Well, I think all of us can agree on this end that it started roughly, because if one had been hanging out in the forest with hogs for 10 years, it's not a place where you develop all sorts of interpersonal skills. And if you own your own business, and I had maybe two or three employees in that thing, I'm not asking anybody anything. I'm telling people stuff, What's all this asking about? So at first I really did not understand the dynamics down here, in the city and working in the city and getting all this, doing all this talking, which if you're not used to doing all that talking can be a little much. And the back and forth and the meetings and all this. But anyway, so it was a typical, it was like bump, bump, bump. And you're exactly right. Administrations come and go. Actually, the stable part are the people who just work in the day-to-day jobs, administrators. And, and you get to know everybody. You get to know all these people. I met with, 2 people I've known since inception of this whole thing this morning. to sort of nail out some details for the next 5 years. And so it was a learning process for sure. And we of course we long ago got over all of that kind of stuff. We're somewhere around 550 markets on Main Street alone. So we don't have to call and remind anybody to bring the trash cans anymore. It's all the little tiny details have been long solved. We have a weak mayor system in this town. And I think I might have been the only person in the city to vote for a strong mayor system. Everybody couldn't stand it. But I swear, if you dealt with the government every day of your life, including the weekends, and write more checks to government folks than there are days in the year, which is another thing that we do, it just becomes, everybody learns their role and their place after a while, and it's been smooth sailing for quite a long time. And for that reason, I don't think anybody else can go down to the DOT and grab a permit to close the Jerry Street Bridge, but I did, because we had established a long record of trust and of quality and putting out something that benefits the city in many, many different ways.
You had talked about a plan for the next 5 years, sitting down. Do you have any aspirations for growth of Soda City or any other ventures for that next 5 years, 10 years that you're able to share?
I don't know if you can see the color of my beard right now, but my aspirational phase of my life is over. So we used to do a bunch, like I said, the Bridge Dinner, Mardi Gras, and then, a dozen different, elongated market events where I'd set up beer gardens and champagne tables and all this other stuff. And when the pandemic happened, that's where whoa, okay, now we got a long time to think about stuff. And we were closed for 4 months, 15 weeks. And, they gave us time to think and reorganize our company and our mission. And what we did is we divested all of these other events to other parties, and decided not to do elongated markets and beer sales and alcohol and all that kind of stuff, but just concentrate on the one thing and make it the best it can be. So that's what's happening. So the other events continue and will for, eternity or whatever. And I think that we've also laid the groundwork for other people to do their own events. And, once we, really put the city through their paces as far as okay, this is what it takes to do an event, and over and over and over and over again, you've seen a lot more events in this town.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. So once we sort of grease the gears a little bit, it makes it easier for everybody. So I guess the answer to your question is, while we aren't doing extra stuff over the next few years, I think you'll see a lot of other people try it because they've seen it's possible.
So this past weekend, we have a very good working relationship with Dick Dyer, our Mercedes Volvo, and they were down there with the electric car event.
Yeah. That
seems to be, something once in a while that Soda City seems to be incorporating, or, topics like that. So talk to us a little bit about how did y'all start incorporating those things? And are you looking to do more like that So
that's a great example for what I was just saying, is that actually is not our event. They apply separately. Okay. Then the police ask us if it's okay with us. We say yes every time. And so that's a perfect example of somebody saying, oh, we can do this, and this is our specialty. Yeah. And they call me, do you like electric cars? And I have electric bikes. I'm really into, all modes of transportation there. It's interesting.
I think the great part about it, though, then, is that now that I know that, y'all still get the publicity from it. Because everybody's down there at Soda City thinking it's your idea that y'all had done this, and it's just bringing.
That's funny, isn't it? It doesn't matter if it's Pride, if it's Latin Fest, if it's Jam Fest, or whatever. It all looks like the market to everybody else. And, that's fine with us.
Yes, sir.
This episode of The Coal Guys is sponsored by Bell Carrington, Price and Gregg. Bell Carrington is our choice for the best real estate attorneys in town. They are highly communicative and make sure that the closing process is as smooth as possible. With offices in North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama, they can handle any of your real estate finance, eminent domain, financial services litigation, and litigation needs. Call their Columbia SC office today at 803-509-5078.